She almost didn't click the apply button. The pay was too high, the job description too vague, and something about it felt wrong. But desperation is louder than instinct. She told herself it was just a nanny job. One child, live in, easy money. What she didn't know was that the house she was walking into had rules that didn't exist on paper. That the father asking her questions already knew her debts, her fears, her breaking points, and that the little girl she was hired to protect was the only weakness of a very dangerous man. At first, the job felt strange, then it felt controlling, then it felt unsafe. And by the time she realized the truth, leaving was no longer an option. Because this was never just a nanny job. It was a test, a risk, and a choice that would change all of their lives forever. The job listing looked unreal. $5,000 a week. Live-in position. One child, no experience required. I stared at my laptop screen in my tiny Boston apartment, my finger hovering over the apply button, while every rational thought in my head screamed that this had to be a scam. Jobs like this didn't exist, not for people like me. I opened my banking app instead. Balance $204,763. Rent $1,650. Due in 5 days. I was already $800 short again. I closed my eyes, inhaled, and clicked apply before I could talk myself out of it. I told myself it didn't matter. Best case, nothing happened. Worst case, I'd waste 10 minutes filling out an application. I had no idea I'd just changed my entire life. 24 hours later, my phone rang. Unknown number. New York area code. I almost didn't answer. Hello? I said cautiously. Miss Harper. The woman's voice was professional, clipped, the kind of tone that didn't waste words. This is regarding your application for the childcare position. My heart jumped. Yes. Mr. Vale would like to conduct an interview. Are you available tomorrow at 10 a.m. in Manhattan? Tomorrow? That was fast. Too fast. Tomorrow? I stammered. That's sudden. Mr. Vale values efficiency, she replied smoothly. The position needs to be filled immediately. A car will collect you at 7:30 a.m. A pause. Your address is still 42 Huntington Avenue, apartment 3C, correct? Cold slid down my spine. I didn't include my address, I said slowly. Only my email and phone number. Another pause. Shorter this time. We conduct thorough background checks on all candidates, she said, as if this were obvious. Standard procedure. My stomach tightened. Background checks? Before an interview? Yes, please dress professionally. Good day, Miss Harper. The line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. That night, I searched everything I could about Mr. Vale. Nothing useful came up. No company profile, no LinkedIn, no press. Just dozens of unrelated people with the same last name. The job posting itself was vague. Private family. No photos, no business name, no details. Red flags everywhere. I should have declined. But $5,000 a week for watching one child. That was more than I made in a month as a part-time barista with an expensive, useless art history degree. 1 month would wipe out my credit cards. 3 months would crush my student loans. 6 months would give me a real chance at the museum career I dreamed about since college. So at 7:25 the next morning, I stood outside my apartment building wearing the only professional outfit I owned. A navy blazer and black pants I'd worn to exactly 2 interviews, both unsuccessful. At precisely 7:30, a black Mercedes pulled up to the curb. The driver stepped out, broad-shouldered, dark suit, earpiece, security. He opened the back door without speaking. Miss Harper. I nodded. my throat too tight to respond, and climbed inside. The car smelled like leather and money. The ride to Manhattan took nearly 90 minutes. The driver didn't say a single word, no matter how many times I tried to make polite conversation. When we reached the Upper East Side, the buildings grew taller, cleaner, more expensive. Finally, the car stopped in front of a limestone townhouse that probably cost more than I'd earn in 10 lifetimes. "Fourth floor?" the driver said, his first words since Boston. "Ring the bell. Mrs. Lynn will meet you." The door was heavy, solid, intimidating, polished brass fixtures, a discreet security camera mounted above the frame. I rang the bell. A melodic chime echoed inside. The woman who opened the door was older, maybe 60, with silver-streaked hair pulled into a tight bun, and sharp, assessing eyes that scanned me in one glance. "Miss Harper," she said, "I am Mrs. Lynn. Follow me." The interior took my breath away. Marble floors, crystal chandeliers, artwork that looked like it belonged in a museum, not a private home. We climbed a curved staircase to the 4th floor, stopping before a set of double doors. Mrs. Lynn knocked twice. "Enter," a male voice called from inside. She pushed the doors open. The office was all dark wood and leather, with floor-to-ceiling bookshelves and tall windows overlooking our private garden. And behind a massive desk sat the man who made my breath catch. He was younger than I expected. Mid-30s, maybe. Thick dark hair swept back, sharp features, olive skin. A jaw shadowed with perfectly maintained stubble. But it was his eyes that held me still. Dark, intelligent, assessing. They didn't just look at me. They measured me. "Miss Harper," he said, standing. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, the kind of presence that filled a room without effort. "Thank you for coming. I'm Adrian Vale." His accent was faint but noticeable, smoothing the edges of his English. He gestured to a leather chair in front of his desk. "Please, sit." I obeyed, clutching my resume folder like a shield. He sat back down, his gaze never leaving my face. "Tell me about yourself." It was a standard interview question, but something about the way he said it made it feel like an interrogation. I launched into my rehearsed answer. Education, work history, my love for children, carefully omitting the desperation and complete lack of childcare experience. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, silence stretched between us. Then he spoke. "You are 26 years old," he said calmly. "Boston University graduate, art history degree, currently working part-time at a coffee shop." My pulse spiked. "You have no formal childcare experience," he continued. "No certifications, no references from families." He leaned forward slightly. "Why should I trust you with my daughter?" My confidence crumbled. I'm responsible," I said quickly. "I learn fast. And You need money," he interrupted. It wasn't a question. "Your credit card debt is $8,000, he went on. "Student loans total $47,000. You are 3 weeks away from eviction." My face burned. "You applied because you are desperate," he said evenly. "Not because you have a passion for childcare." I swallowed hard. "How do you know all that?" "I told you," he replied. "We conduct thorough background checks." He slid a folder across the desk. "That is your entire life reduced to data." I stared at it, too stunned to open it. "That's an invasion of privacy," I said. "That is due diligence," he corrected. "My daughter's safety is non-negotiable." He studied me for a moment longer. "But desperation," he added quietly, "can create loyalty." Something in his tone made my stomach twist. "I'm not desperate," I lied. A thin smile touched his lips. "You're here, aren't you?" And in that moment, I knew this wasn't just a job interview, it was a test. I should have walked out. I knew that. I felt it in the tightness of my chest, in the way my instincts clawed at me, telling me that no amount of money was worth this level of scrutiny. But I didn't stand. I looked at him instead. "What do you want to know?" I asked quietly. "The truth," Adrian Vale replied. I inhaled slowly. "I want this job because $5,000 a week would change my life. It would erase my debt, give me savings, give me a future that isn't just surviving month to month." I lifted my chin, meeting his gaze. "Yes, I'm desperate, but that doesn't mean I'm careless. I would never harm a child, ever." Something shifted in his expression, subtle, almost imperceptible. "You're honest?" he said. "That's rare." He stood and moved toward the window, his hands clasped behind his back. "My daughter's name is Elena," he said. "She's 5 years old." His voice softened, just slightly. "Her mother died when she was 2. "I'm sorry," I said instinctively. "Don't be." His tone shut the subject down immediately. "Elena is intelligent, stubborn, and extremely perceptive. She doesn't trust easily." He turned back to face me. "She's had 3 nannies in the past year. None lasted more than a month." "Why?" I asked. "Because my work requires unusual hours. Because Elena tests boundaries relentlessly. And because the women I hired were intimidated by my lifestyle." The word lifestyle carried weight. "What do you do?" I asked. "International consulting," he said smoothly. "Risk management." It was vague on purpose. "It means," he continued, "that I need someone flexible, discreet, and unafraid of unconventional rules." He returned to his desk and pulled out a stack of documents. "If you accept this position, you'll sign confidentiality agreements, security protocols, and behavioral clauses." He slid the papers toward me. "You'll live here full-time. You'll have your own private suite. You'll report directly to me regarding Elena's education, health, and emotional development." "What about time off?" I asked. "1 weekend per month," he said, "after the first 3 months. And emergencies require my approval." I stared at the contracts. Dense legal language, non-disclosure clauses, communication monitoring, termination at employer discretion. "This is insane," I said. "You're basically asking me to sign away my freedom." "I'm asking you to agree to safeguards," he replied calmly, "in exchange for exceptional compensation." He leaned forward, his gaze intense. "My daughter's safety outweighs your social life." "It's not about my social life," I snapped. "It's about privacy." "You'll have privacy," he said, "within reason. Your space will be yours. Your off hours will be yours. But when you're working, when you're caring for my child, you follow my rules." He paused. "Take it or leave it. Decide now." My phone buzzed in my pocket. I didn't have to look to know who it was. Rent reminder. Final notice. I had $200 in my account. I looked back at Adrian. "How do I know you're not dangerous?" I asked. "That this isn't a cover for something worse?" His expression didn't change. "You don't," he said. "You calculate risk." He stood. 10 minutes. Read the contracts. I'll be back." He left through a side door, and the room felt colder without him. I read every page. The salary was real. $5,000 a week. Bi-weekly payments, health insurance, a $10,000 signing bonus after 90 days. The duties were straightforward, but the restrictions were suffocating. My phone buzzed again. This time, I looked. Rent must be received by Friday or eviction proceedings will begin. 3 days. When Adrian returned, I was standing. I'll do it, I said. But I have conditions. His eyebrow lifted. You're negotiating. I'm protecting myself, I replied. If you terminate me without cause within the first 90 days, I get full compensation for that period. A slow smile spread across his face. Agreed. And 1 phone call per day, I added, unmonitored, to my mother. He considered it. 15 minutes, scheduled, location restrictions remain. I nodded. Deal. He picked up a pen and amended the documents. Mrs. Lynn will show you to your suite, he said. You start tomorrow. Tomorrow? I echoed. Elena doesn't wait, he replied. I signed. My hand shook slightly as I wrote my name. Mrs. Lynn led me to the 3rd floor. This is your suite, she said, unlocking the door. It wasn't a bedroom. It was a small apartment, a sitting area, a kitchenette, a bedroom with a queen-sized bed, a bathroom with a rainfall shower. Elena's room is next door, Mrs. Lynn added. Mr. Vale's suite is on the 4th floor. Do not go there without permission. She handed me a tablet. Elena's schedule. Follow it exactly. The door closed behind her with a final click. I stood there, staring around the room, my reality sinking in. That evening, Mrs. Lynn knocked at 5:45. Dinner was served in a massive dining room, set for 12, though only 2 places were laid. Adrian sat at the head of the table. Elena is eating in her room tonight, he said. Why? I asked. She prefers control, he replied. As we ate, he spoke again. Elena will resist you, he said. She will test you. She may try to hurt your feelings. He met my eyes. I need someone who won't give up on her. I won't, I said. Good, he replied. Because this house doesn't tolerate weakness. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, wondering what I had just agreed to. I didn't sleep. At 6 a.m., there was a knock. Miss Harper. Mrs. Lynn's voice called softly. It's time to wake Elena. I took a deep breath and opened the door next to mine. The room was filled with toys, books, and soft pink light. A small figure lay buried under blankets. Elena, I said gently. Good morning. No response. Elena, sweetheart, it's time to get dressed. The blankets shifted. A small face appeared. Dark curls. Blue eyes filled with suspicion. Who are you? She demanded. I'm Emma, I said. I'm going to help take care of you. I don't need help, she snapped. Go away. She hurled a stuffed rabbit at me. I caught it. Elena, I said calmly. Throwing things isn't okay. I want my mom, she whispered. My heart cracked. I sat on the edge of the bed, giving her space. I can't replace her, I said softly, but I can stay. She stared at me, then turned away. I don't like you. I know, I said. You don't have to, but you still have to get dressed. I waited. After a long moment, she climbed out of bed and deliberately put on mismatched clothes. She stood in front of me, defiant. Aren't you going to make me change? No, I said. You chose them. Confusion flickered across her face. At breakfast, Adrian watched us closely. When Elena climbed into her chair, he glanced at her outfit and smirked. That's my girl, he said. After breakfast, he pulled me aside. You handled that well, he said quietly. She wants control, I replied. Fighting her would just prove she can get it. His gaze lingered on me longer than necessary. Interesting, he said. That evening, Mrs. Lynn came to my door again. Mr. Vale would like to see you. When I entered his office, he wasn't behind his desk. He was standing by the fireplace. Tell me about today, he said. As I spoke, His attention was absolute. "You're better with her than you claimed," he said. "She's not difficult," I replied. "She's grieving." His jaw tightened. "She doesn't trust easily," he said. "Neither do you," I said, before I could stop myself. Silence. Then unexpectedly, he laughed. "You may be trouble, Miss Harper." "I've been told," I replied. He studied me, something unreadable in his eyes. "You should get some rest," he said. "Tomorrow won't be easier." As I left, I had no idea that within days, I'd learn exactly how dangerous this house really was. I woke up before the alarm. The house was quiet in that unnatural way expensive houses often are. Too insulated, too controlled. No traffic noise, no neighbors arguing. Just silence and the faint hum of security systems hidden behind the walls. For a moment, I forgot where I was. Then reality came rushing back. The contracts, the man upstairs, the little girl next door, who already carried more grief than she knew what to do with. At 6 sharp, I knocked softly on Elena's door. She didn't answer. I waited a few seconds, then opened it slowly. She was already awake, sitting upright in bed, hugging her stuffed rabbit like a shield. "You didn't knock yesterday," she said accusingly. "I did," I replied gently. "You were pretending to be asleep." Her eyes narrowed. "How do you know?" "Because I used to do the same thing," I said. That seemed to surprise her. She studied me for a long moment. "You're still here?" I said I'd stay. She shrugged, trying to look indifferent, but her grip on the rabbit loosened just a little. The day followed the schedule precisely. Breakfast, reading, math games, outdoor time in the private garden. Elena tested me constantly. She ignored instructions. She spilled juice on purpose. She asked the same question over and over just to see if I'd snap. I didn't. By mid-afternoon, she stopped glaring at me every 5 seconds. By evening, she let me brush her hair. That night, after Elena was asleep, Mrs. Lynn stopped me in the hallway. "Mr. Vale would like to see you." Again. I followed her up to the 4th floor, my nerves buzzing. This time, Adrian was seated behind his desk, reviewing documents. He looked up when I entered, his gaze sharp. "Sit." I did. "You're adapting quickly," he said. "Elena hasn't resisted you the way she usually does." "She doesn't need someone to win against her," I said. "She needs someone predictable." He nodded slowly. "Predictability is a luxury," he said. "One I can't afford." Something in his tone made me look up. "You're worried about something," I said. His eyes flicked to mine. "You're observant." "I have to be," I replied. "Children notice everything. Adults just forget that they do." For a moment, his mask slipped. Just for a second. Then it was back in place. "Mrs. Lynn will train you on emergency protocols tomorrow," he said. "Pay attention." "Emergency protocols?" I asked. "Yes." "For what kind of emergencies?" His gaze sharpened. "The kind that don't come with warnings." A chill crawled up my spine. That night, I used my 15-minute call to phone my mother. "Something's wrong," I said quietly. "I can't explain it, but—" "Emma," she interrupted gently, "if you feel unsafe—" "I don't," I said, surprising myself. "Not exactly. I just feel like I walked into someone else's wall." Silence. "Then be careful," she said, "and trust yourself." I lay awake long after the call ended. On the 3rd night, it happened. It was almost midnight when shouting erupted downstairs. Not loud enough to wake the entire house, but sharp, angry, unmistakable. I was in my suite when Mrs. Lynn appeared at my door. Her calm cracked for the first time. "Take Elena to her room," she said urgently. "Lock the door." "What's going on?" I asked. No questions, she said. Now? My heart pounded as I hurried next door. Elena, I whispered. We're going to play a quiet game, okay? She took one look at my face and nodded. I locked the door and pulled the curtains shut. From downstairs came the sound of something heavy hitting a wall. Elena flinched. Is Papa mad? She whispered. Your Papa's handling something, I said, forcing calm into my voice. He's very strong. The sounds continued. Voices, a crash, a low, furious voice I recognized as Adrian's, but deeper, darker. Elena crawled into my lap without asking. I held her, my arms tight around her small body, every instinct screaming that this was no normal household disagreement. After what felt like forever, footsteps approached the door. A knock. Emma? Adrian's voice called. It's me. I hesitated. What's my bedtime rule? Elena whispered urgently. I swallowed. The nightlight stays on. The nightlight stays on? Adrian repeated. Immediately. I unlocked the door. He stood there, breathing hard. His knuckles were bloodied. A thin cut ran along his jaw. His shirt sleeve was torn, but he was standing. Elena launched herself at him, clinging to his neck. I'm okay, he murmured to her. I promise. His eyes met mine over her head. This is your last chance, he said quietly. You can leave tonight. No penalties. I looked at Elena's fingers twisted into my shirt. I'm not leaving, I said. Something fierce flashed across his face. Then understand this, he said. From now on, you follow every rule. No curiosity, no heroics. I understand, I replied. That night, after Elena finally slept, I went upstairs with a first aid kit. Adrian was in his bathroom, washing blood from his hands. You should be afraid, he said, without looking at me. I am, I replied. But fear doesn't mean running. I cleaned his knuckles carefully. He exhaled slowly, like he hadn't realized how tense he was until that moment. They'll test me again, he said, when they realize you matter. My hands stilled. Who was they? He met my eyes in the mirror. People who don't like losing. Silence stretched between us. You didn't have to stay, he said. I know, I replied. His gaze softened, just barely. That was the moment, he said quietly, when everything changed. And I knew, deep down, that whatever line I had crossed, there was no going back now. The next morning, the house felt different, not quieter, tighter, like it was holding its breath. I noticed it in the way the guards outside rotated shifts more frequently, in the way Mrs. Lynn spoke less and watched more, in the way Adrian kissed Elena's forehead a second longer before leaving the breakfast table. He barely looked at me, not cold, careful, as if distance itself were a form of protection. Elena sensed it too. She stuck close to me all day, following me from room to room, refusing to play alone. Papa's mad, she said softly, while we colored at the dining table. He's busy, I corrected gently. She frowned. Busy people don't bleed. My hand froze around the crayon. Children really did see everything. That afternoon, Mrs. Lynn trained me on protocols, not hypothetical ones, real ones, hidden panels, soundproof rooms, cameras disguised as light fixtures, codes, signals. If this happens, she said calmly, pressing a sequence into the wall, you take Elena here, lock the door, you wait. For how long? I asked. Until Mr. Vale comes for you, she replied. And if he doesn't? She looked at me then, really looked at me. He always comes. That night, Adrian didn't call me to his office. I told myself that was good. I also knew I was lying. 2 days passed, then 3. No more shouting, no more blood, just tension humming beneath the surface like a live wire. On the fourth night, Adrian finally spoke to me. It was late. Elena was asleep. I was in the small library reorganizing children's books she'd dragged everywhere. Emma! His voice behind me made me jump. I turned. He stood in the doorway, jacket off, sleeves rolled up, looking exhausted in a way money couldn't fix. "Walk with me," he said. We moved through the house in silence, ending up in the garden. The city lights were muted here, hidden behind tall walls and hedges. "Do you regret staying?" he asked suddenly. I didn't answer right away. "No," I said finally. "But I'm not pretending I understand everything." "That's wise," he replied. "Understanding comes with cost." He leaned against the stone railing, looking out at the dark garden. "I built this life to protect my daughter," he said. "Some people see that as a weakness." "And you?" I asked. He turned to me. "I see it as the only thing that matters." There it was. Not the power, not the control, her. "People will test that," he continued. "They'll test you too." I crossed my arms. "You're saying I'm a liability." "I'm saying you're visible," he corrected. "That's worse." The words should have scared me more than they did. Instead, something else crept in. Something dangerous and unwanted. Understanding. "I won't get in the way," I said. Adrian's gaze softened. "You already are?" Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, jaw tightening. "We're done for tonight," he said. "Get some rest." I watched him walk away, realizing something terrifying. I didn't just matter now. I was leverage. The next afternoon, Elena didn't come home from her lesson on time. 5 minutes late, then 10. Mrs. Lynn's calm cracked. Adrian wasn't home. My phone rang, unknown number. I answered without thinking. "Miss Harper," a male voice said, calm, polite. "You're taking care of Elena Vale, correct?" My heart slammed into my ribs. "Who is this?" I demanded. "A concerned party," he replied. "There's been a small delay, no need to panic." "Where is she?" My voice shook despite my effort. A pause. "Tell Adrian Vale that visibility has consequences." The call ended. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. Then a car pulled into the drive. Elena ran inside, laughing, unaware of how close the world had come to shattering. Behind her, Adrian stepped out of the shadows, and for the first time since I'd met him, his control slipped. That night, he told me the truth, not everything, but enough. "There are people who want what I have," he said quietly. "Power, territory, influence." "And Elena?" I asked. "She's my pressure point." Silence. "And me?" I asked. His eyes met mine, dark and unflinching. "You're becoming one." The weight of that settled between us. "I can leave," I said. "No," he said immediately. Then he paused. "Not yet." "Then what?" I asked. He stepped closer. Too close. "Then you learn," he said. "And you stop pretending this is just a job." The air between us was charged, dangerous, undeniable. This wasn't attraction. This was collision. And I knew, standing there in the garden with a man whose enemies had just tested him through a child. Whatever was coming next would change us both. That night, I didn't sleep. Not because of fear alone, but because of clarity. The call hadn't been a threat. It had been a warning. Elena was no longer just Adrian Vale's daughter. She was a message. And somehow, without asking for it, I had become part of that message too. The next morning, Adrian didn't leave the house. That alone told me everything. He stood at the kitchen counter, coffee untouched, phone in his hand, issuing quiet instructions I couldn't hear. His posture was relaxed, but his eyes were razor sharp, tracking, calculating. Elena sensed it. She ate her breakfast slower than usual, watching her father over the rim of her glass. "Are you going somewhere today?" she asked. "No," Adrian replied instantly. "I'm staying with you." Her shoulders relaxed, mine tightened. Because him staying meant something had gone wrong. After breakfast, Mrs. Lynn pulled me aside. "You do not leave Elena alone today," she said quietly. "Not even for a minute." "What's happening?" I asked. She didn't answer directly. "Trust that Mr. Vale is handling it." That sentence was starting to feel like a prayer people said when they didn't want to say the truth. The house shifted into lockdown mode without ever announcing it. More guards, different cars outside, windows that subtly darkened. Elena noticed. "Why are there so many people today?" she asked while we played on the floor. "They're just visiting," I lied gently. She studied me. "You're lying." I froze. "You don't lie good," she added matter-of-factly. I exhaled slowly. Sometimes adults lie because the truth is scary. She considered that. "Is it scary for you?" "Yes," I admitted. She nodded, then crawled into my lap without another word. That small gesture hit harder than anything else. Late that afternoon, Adrian called me into his office. Not asked, called. I left Elena with Mrs. Lynn and climbed the stairs, my pulse steady but loud. He stood near the desk, jacket off, sleeves rolled, looking less like a businessman and more like a general mid-war. "Sit," he said. I didn't. "What's going on?" I asked instead. His eyes flicked to the door, then back to me. "You were tested yesterday," he said, "through a child." I snapped. "Your child?" "Yes," he said calmly. "And that's why it matters." I crossed my arms. "I didn't sign up to be leverage." "No," he said. "You signed up to be trusted." The words landed heavier than I expected. "Emma," he continued, voice lower now, "you need to understand something. People don't threaten me directly. They threaten what I care about. And you care about Elena," I said. His jaw tightened. "More than my own life." Silence. "And me?" I asked, hating myself for the question, but needing the answer. He didn't respond immediately. That was answer enough. But then he spoke. "You are becoming part of her world," he said, "which means you're stepping into mine." "That wasn't my choice," I said. "It became your choice the moment you stayed," he replied. "The moment you didn't run." I laughed softly, bitter. "You make it sound heroic." It wasn't. I stayed because I didn't want to abandon a 5-year-old. "That," he said quietly, "is exactly why I trust you." The room felt smaller. "I need you to follow new rules," he continued. "No solo outings, no deviations, no contact with anyone outside this house unless approved." "You're tightening the leash," I said. "I'm putting armor on you," he corrected. I shook my head. "This is getting dangerous." "It already is," he said. "You're just finally seeing it." I should have pushed back harder. I should have demanded an exit. Instead, I asked the wrong question. "Who was on the phone yesterday?" His eyes darkened. "A man who believes fear is a currency," he said, "and who just spent some." That evening, Elena refused to sleep. She sat up in bed, rabbit clutched to her chest. "Stay," she said simply when I turned to leave. "I'll be right outside," I told her. "No," she insisted. "Stay." I hesitated only a second before sitting on the edge of her bed. She watched me carefully. "You won't disappear, right?" The question broke something in me. "No," I said softly. "I promise." She nodded, satisfied, and fell asleep minutes later. I stayed longer than necessary. When I finally stepped into the hallway, Adrian was there, leaning against the wall, waiting. "You promised her," he said quietly. "I meant it," I replied. He studied my face like he was committing it to memory. "Be careful what you promise in this house," he said. "Promises get expensive." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed again. He checked it, expression hardening. "We have a problem," he said. "What kind?" I asked. "The kind that doesn't end quietly." And as he turned and walked away, I realized something chilling. The test wasn't over. It was just beginning. The problem arrived just after midnight. Not with shouting, not with violence, but with silence. The kind of silence that feels intentional. I was sitting in Elena's room, the small lamp casting a warm circle of light across the floor, when I realized the house no longer hummed. The subtle background noise I'd grown used to, the low vibration of systems, distant footsteps, the faint murmur of guards rotating shifts was gone. I froze. Elena was asleep, her breathing slow and steady, one small hand curled around the rabbit. I stayed still, listening. Nothing. Not even the city. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A message from Adrian. "Stay where you are. Lock the door. Do not open it for anyone." My heart slammed against my ribs. I slid quietly off the bed, locked the door, and crossed to the far wall where Mrs. Lynn had shown me the concealed panel weeks ago. I pressed the sequence with trembling fingers. The room shifted. The bookshelf slid back just enough to reveal reinforced steel beneath decorative wood. Safe mode. I returned to Elena, pulling her gently into my arms, my mind racing. Minutes passed. 10, 20. Then I heard it. Not shouting. Footsteps. Slow, purposeful. Too measured to be staff. Elena stirred, her brow furrowing. I smoothed her hair, whispering reassurances. I wasn't sure I believed myself. My phone buzzed again. "They're inside the perimeter. You're safe. Stay hidden." I pressed my forehead to Elena's hair, breathing her in, grounding myself in the reality of her warmth. Somewhere in the house, doors opened. Voices murmured, low, controlled, male. Then a single sharp sound echoed through the walls. A gunshot. Elena jerked awake. "Emma!" she whispered, panic sharp in her voice. "What was that?" I held her tightly. "Fireworks," I lied. "Sometimes grown-ups are weird like that." She didn't believe me. Neither did I. Time stretched into something unreal. I counted Elena's breaths, focused on keeping my hands steady, my voice calm. Finally, footsteps again. Faster now, multiple. A knock on the door. I didn't move. Another knock, firmer. "Emma," Adrian's voice called quietly. "It's over." I hesitated, every protocol screaming caution. "What's my promise to Elena?" I asked, my voice barely steady. A pause. "That I'll always come back," Adrian answered immediately. I unlocked the door. He stood there with 2 guards behind him. His suit jacket was gone, his shirt smeared with blood, none of it his, I hoped. His expression was controlled, but his eyes were dark with something I'd never seen before. Rage, yes, but also something closer to fear. He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "You did exactly right," he said softly. Elena clung to me, staring at him with wide eyes. "Papa? I'm here, princess." He crouched, opening his arms. She went to him instantly, burying her face in his neck. "I heard a bang," she said. "I know," he murmured. "It scared me too." That lie hurt worse than the others. Once Elena was settled back to sleep, this time in Adrian's arms, I followed him to the office. The house was awake now, guards moving, Mrs. Lynn issuing quiet instructions, a broken vase near the staircase. blood on marble already being cleaned. What happened? I asked once the door shut behind us. Adrian poured himself a drink, didn't offer me one. An attempted breach, he said. They wanted proof of access. To Elena? My voice shook. To you? He replied. I stared at him. Me? He turned, eyes sharp. You calm her. You stabilize her. If they can't reach her directly, they reach the person she trusts. The room felt like it tilted. I never should have let this go on, he said quietly. This was my mistake. You didn't make them violent, I snapped. They chose that. He looked at me, then really looked, and something in his expression shifted. This is why you don't belong in this world, he said. You see choice where others see opportunity. And you? I asked. I see consequences. Silence fell between us. What happens now? I asked. He exhaled slowly. Now I ended. That should have reassured me. Instead, it terrified me. The next days blurred together. Elena stayed close to me constantly. She refused lessons, refused playtime unless I was in the room. At night, she insisted I sit beside her bed until she slept. Adrian didn't leave the house. He held meetings behind closed doors, spoke in languages I didn't understand. His phone never stopped vibrating. He barely slept. Neither did I. On the fourth night, he came to my suite, not his office, my space. He knocked once, waited. I opened the door. He stood there, exhaustion carved into his face. We need to talk, he said. I let him in. He didn't sit, didn't pace, just stood there, hands clasped behind his back. You're not just an employee anymore, he said, whether you want that or not. I never wanted to be leverage, I replied. I know, he said quietly. That's why this ends now. My chest tightened. Ends how? I removed the threat. And after? I asked. He looked at me. After, you leave. The words landed like a slap. Leave? I echoed. Yes, he said firmly. I'll compensate you, generously. I'll set you up anywhere you want, but you won't stay here. What about Elena? I demanded. She'll adapt, he said, though his jaw tightened. She always does. I laughed bitterly. You're lying to yourself. He didn't deny it. This house will never be safe for someone like you, he continued. You don't harden. You don't numb. You feel everything. And that's a weakness? I asked. In my world? He met my eyes. Yes. The silence stretched. Then I said the thing I hadn't planned to say. I'm not leaving. His eyes flashed. This isn't a choice. It is, I said. For me. You don't understand. I understand perfectly. I cut in. You're afraid. That stopped him. Not for yourself, I continued. For her and for me. He stepped closer, anger simmering just beneath the surface. Fear keeps people alive. So does love, I shot back. And you don't get to decide which one matters more for me. The air between us felt electric. This is reckless, he said. Everything about your life is reckless, I replied. You just dress it up as control. He stared at me for a long moment, something unreadable in his eyes. Then, unexpectedly, he laughed, a short, hollow sound. You're impossible, he said. And you're not used to being challenged, I replied. Silence again. Then his voice dropped. If you stay, he said, you don't get half-truths anymore. My heart skipped. Meaning? You learn everything, he said. Who I am, what I do, why this house exists the way it does. That makes me safer, I asked. No, he said honestly. It makes you informed. I swallowed. Do you want that? He asked. I thought of Elena's arms around my neck, of her whispering, don't disappear. of the gunshot echoing through walls. "Yes," I said. Adrian studied me, then nodded once. "Then tomorrow," he said. "I'll show you." He turned to leave. At the door, he paused. "Emma," he said quietly. "Yes?" "Once you see it," he added, "you may still choose to walk away." I held his gaze. "And if I don't?" His eyes darkened. "Then you're truly inside." The door closed behind him. I sat on the edge of my bed, heart racing, knowing one undeniable truth. I had crossed the point of no return. And tomorrow, I would finally learn what kind of man Adrian Vale really was. The first thing I noticed was how quickly normal returned. Too quickly. By morning, the house looked exactly as it always had. The broken vase was gone. The faint metallic smell in the air had vanished. Guards rotated with quiet efficiency, their expressions neutral, almost bored. If I hadn't lived through the night, I might have believed nothing happened at all. Elena ate her breakfast happily, chattering about a dream where her rabbit learned to talk and demanded pancakes. Adrian listened attentively, smiling at the right moments, nodding as if his world had nearly cracked open hours earlier. I watched him closely. There was no blood, no visible injuries, but something in him had shifted. After breakfast, Mrs. Lynn took Elena outside for her lesson in the garden. The moment they disappeared through the glass doors, Adrian turned to me. "Walk with me," he said. We moved through the house in silence, past rooms I knew well now, until he stopped in front of a door I'd never seen open. "This is mine," he said. He opened it. It wasn't the office, it was a bedroom, but not the luxurious, untouchable space I'd imagined. It was sparse, clean, controlled. A bed, a desk, a bookshelf, a single photograph on the nightstand. I stepped closer. It was Elena, younger, laughing, sitting on his shoulders. "This is where I think," he said, "and where I remember who I am when everything else tries to take that away." He closed the door behind us. "Sit," he said gently this time. I sat on the edge of the bed. "I didn't bring you here to intimidate you," he continued. "I brought you here because if you're going to stay, you need to understand something." I looked up. "What?" "I don't control people," he said. "I control outcomes." "That sounds like the same thing," I replied. He shook his head. "Control over people creates resentment. Control over outcomes creates stability." I studied him. "And what about me?" His gaze held mine. "You're not an outcome." The words landed softly but deeply. "You didn't ask for this," he said. "But you stepped into it anyway. That makes you dangerous." "Dangerous?" I echoed. "Timon," he said simply. "Because you make me hesitate." I swallowed. "That man last night," he continued. "He wanted me to react emotionally, to act without thinking." "And did you?" I asked. "No," he replied. "Because I thought of Elena, and then I thought of you." The room felt smaller. "That's not fair," I said, quietly. I didn't agree to matter that much. "I didn't ask you to," he said. "You just do." Silence stretched between us, thick and charged. "I need to ask you something," I said. "Ask." "Why me?" I said. "You could have hired someone trained, someone hardened." He looked away for a moment, then back. "Because hardened people don't soften children," he said. "They teach them how to survive. You teach her how to live." I felt my throat tighten. "And because," he added, "you don't see me as a myth or a monster. You see a man making choices." "That doesn't make them right," I said. "No," he agreed, "but it makes them mine." He stood then, putting distance between us, as if he realized how close we'd come to something neither of us was ready to name. "I'm leaving tonight," he said. My heart jumped. "Where?" "A meeting," he replied. "One that decides whether this ends permanently or drags on." I stood too. "Then what?" "Then you follow protocol," he said. "No matter what you hear, no matter who calls. And if you don't come back?" The question slipped out before I could stop it. He met my eyes. "I will." Not a promise, a fact. That evening, Elena clung to him harder than usual. "You're going again?" she said, accusing but calm. "Yes," he said, kneeling, "but Emma will be here." Elena looked at me, then back at him. "She stays." "Yes," he said, "she stays." When he left, the house felt too large. Hours passed. I kept Elena distracted with games, stories, anything to keep her from noticing the tension humming through the walls. At 9, she finally fell asleep with her head on my chest. I stayed there, listening to her breathing until my phone vibrated. Unknown number. I didn't answer. It rang again and again. Then a message. "You should have left when you had the chance." My blood ran cold. I typed back before fear could stop me. "Who is this?" 3 dots appeared, then stopped. Another message. "You don't belong in his world." I stared at the screen, my mind racing. "Neither do you," I typed. The reply came instantly. "Oh, I do." A knock sounded downstairs. My heart leapt into my throat. I didn't move. Another knock. Then Mrs. Lynn's voice, calm but urgent. "Emma, bring Elena, now." I didn't hesitate. I scooped Elena up, carrying her to the safe room, locking the door behind us. "What's happening?" she whispered. "Just being extra careful," I said, holding her tight. Footsteps echoed through the house. Voices I didn't recognize. Raised, angry. Then Adrian's voice cut through them. Sharp, commanding. Elena relaxed slightly at the sound. "He's home?" she said. "Yes," I whispered. "He's home." Minutes later, the knock came. "Emma," Adrian called. "It's me." I asked the question anyway. "What did Elena say when she learned to ride her bike?" "That I was running too fast," he answered. I unlocked the door. He stepped inside, breathless, eyes burning. "Pack a bag," he said quietly, "just in case." "Case of what?" I asked. "Case of escalation," he replied. That night, I didn't go back to my suite. I sat with Elena in her room while Adrian paced the hallway outside, speaking into his phone in low, controlled tones. Sometime after midnight, he came in. "She's asleep?" he asked. "Yes," I whispered. He nodded, then sat on the floor beside the bed, back against the wall, eyes closed. "You should rest," I told him. "So should you," he replied. Neither of us moved. "I don't regret hiring you," he said quietly. "I don't regret staying," I replied. His eyes opened, meeting mine in the dim light. "That may be the most dangerous thing we've said so far," he murmured. "Maybe," I said, "but it's also the most honest." He exhaled slowly, tension bleeding from his shoulders just a little. Outside, the city continued on, unaware of the small war being fought inside a quiet townhouse. And as I watched the man who'd built an empire around control finally let himself rest, just for a moment, I understood something clearly. This wasn't about power anymore. It was about what he was willing to lose, and what I was willing to risk to stay. I packed the bag with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Not because I didn't know what to take, but because every folded piece of clothing felt like a possibility of leaving, of running, of not coming back. Elena slept through it all, curled on her side, rabbit tucked beneath her chin, completely unaware that her life had just shifted again. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching silently. "You don't need much," he said. "This isn't an escape, it's precaution." "That's what people always say before things get worse," I replied. He didn't argue. Mrs. Lynn appeared behind him, already dressed, already prepared. She looked at the bag and nodded once, approval in her eyes. The car waited in the garage, engine already running. No sirens, no chaos, just efficiency. Elena woke as I lifted her into my arms. "Where are we going?" she asked sleepily. "A little trip," Adrian said softly, crouching beside her. "Just for a day or two." "Are you coming?" she asked immediately. Adrian hesitated, just for a fraction of a second. "I'll meet you soon," he said. She frowned. "You promise?" He placed his forehead against hers. "Always." I saw it then, the lie, not in his words, in his eyes. The drive out of the city was silent. Mrs. Lynn sat in the front seat, alert but calm. 2 guards followed in another car, headlights a steady presence behind us. Elena fell back asleep against my shoulder. I stared out the window, watching the city dissolve into darkness, then into unfamiliar roads. "Where are we going?" I asked quietly. "A place that doesn't exist on maps," Mrs. Lynn replied, "and doesn't answer to anyone." That didn't comfort me. The safe house was smaller than I expected, a modest structure hidden among trees, surrounded by land that felt deliberately empty. No neighbors, no streetlights. Security was everywhere, but subtle. Inside, it was warm. Lived in, almost normal. Mrs. Lynn showed Elena a bedroom filled with toys that had clearly been placed there long before tonight. "Papa thought of everything," Elena said proudly. I forced a smile. "Yes, he always did." After Elena fell asleep again, I stepped outside. The air smelled like pine and rain. Mrs. Lynn joined me, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. "You're wondering if he'll come," she said. "Yes," I admitted. She studied me for a long moment. "He will, but not without cost." "What kind of cost?" I asked. She looked toward the trees. "The kind that ends chapters." My phone buzzed in my hand. A message from Adrian. "I'm sorry." That was all. No explanation, no reassurance. Just an apology. I stared at the screen, my chest tight. I typed back. "For what?" The response took longer than I liked. "For putting you in a position where leaving feels like betrayal." Tears burned my eyes. "I chose to stay," I wrote. "You didn't force me." "I know," he replied. "That's what scares me." The next 24 hours crawled. News didn't reach us. Time lost meaning. Elena asked for Adrian constantly. Each time I found myself lying just a little more smoothly. "He's busy. He's coming soon. He's okay." By the second night, I stopped believing myself. I was in the kitchen when Mrs. Lynn's phone rang. She answered immediately. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture did. "Yes," she said. "Understood." She ended the call and turned to me. "It's time," she said. My heart slammed. "Time for what?" "For a decision," she replied. Adrian arrived just before dawn. Not alone. 2 men flanked him, both unfamiliar, both carrying the quiet weight of authority. He looked exhausted, not physically, morally. Elena ran to him the moment she saw him. "Papa!" she cried, throwing her arms around his neck. He held her tightly, eyes closed, breathing her in like air after drowning. Then his gaze lifted to mine. We held eye contact across the room. There was no relief in his eyes, only resolve. "Mrs. Lynn," he said quietly, "take Elena outside." Elena protested, but Mrs. Lynn guided her gently away. The door closed. The silence that followed was crushing. I can't keep doing this, Adrian said. Doing what? I asked. Choosing between people I love and the world I built, he replied. My breath caught. One of them has to go. I waited. The threats won't stop, he continued. They'll adapt. They always do. And your solution? I asked carefully. To disappear, he said. Completely. The room tilted. You mean, I mean leaving everything, he said. The house, the name, the operations. That's not possible, I whispered. It is, he replied. If I'm willing to lose what I was. Silence. And Helena? I asked. She deserves a childhood without safe rooms, he said. Without codes. Without men with guns. My throat tightened. And you? I asked. He looked at me then, not as a strategist, not as a protector, but as a man standing at the edge of something irreversible. I don't know who I am without this, he admitted, but I know who I don't want to be anymore. I took a step toward him. You don't have to decide everything today, I said. Yes, he replied softly. I do. Because of me? I asked. Because of you, he corrected. And her. I swallowed hard. If you walk away, I said, they won't forgive you. I'm not asking for forgiveness, he replied. I'm choosing survival. For us? I asked. For her? He said. Then after a pause, and for you? The weight of it settled over me. Leaving meant safety. Staying meant danger. But leaving also meant erasing everything he had been. Do you want me to come with you? I asked quietly. He didn't answer right away. Then honestly, I don't know how to do this without you. That was the moment. Not the gunshots, not the threats, not the safe rooms. That. Because love, real love, doesn't arrive with certainty. It arrives with fear and the willingness to choose anyway. And standing there, watching a powerful man consider abandoning everything he'd built for a future he couldn't guarantee, I understood the truth. The most dangerous decision isn't staying, it's changing. I didn't answer him right away, not because I didn't care, but because the weight of what he was offering, what he was asking, pressed the air out of my lungs. Disappearing wasn't just moving, it was erasing. New names, new routines, new lies, told gently enough that a child could grow up believing them. You're asking me to leave everything, I said quietly. Adrian nodded. I'm asking you to survive. That's not the same thing, I replied. No, he agreed. It's harder. Mrs. Lynn returned with Elena, who immediately sensed the shift in the room. She looked from Adrian to me, eyes narrowing slightly. Why are you sad? Neither of us answered. I don't like this place anymore, she said suddenly. It smells like waiting. The words hit harder than they should have. Adrian crouched in front of her. We won't stay long. She studied his face carefully, then leaned forward and pressed her forehead to his. You're lying again. He closed his eyes. That night, we stayed. Not because it was safe, but because we weren't ready to decide who we would be next. Elena slept between us on the narrow bed, her small body warm and solid, anchoring us to the moment. Adrian lay awake, staring at the ceiling. I watched him from the corner of my eye. You don't have to choose tonight, I said softly. Yes, he replied. I do. Why? Because hesitation gets people killed. I turned onto my side, facing him. And what if certainty costs you everything? He met my gaze. Then at least it's my choice. The next morning the call came. Not to him, to me, unknown number. I stepped outside before answering, the chill air biting into my skin. Emma Harper, a man's voice said calmly. You've been difficult to reach. Who is this? I demanded. A friend of Adrian's enemies, he replied pleasantly. or an enemy of his friends. Depends how you look at it. My heart hammered. If you're threatening me, I'm not threatening, he interrupted. I'm offering clarity. Silence. You don't belong in his world, he continued. But you've made yourself indispensable. I didn't ask for that, I said. No one ever does, he replied. That's what makes leverage so effective. I swallowed. What do you want? For you to understand, he said, that if Adrian disappears, the vacuum he leaves will be filled, and vacuums are violent. The line went dead. I stood there for a long moment, phone pressed to my ear, feeling the truth of his words sink in. When I went back inside, Adrian looked up instantly. You got a call, he said. Yes. From who? Someone who knows you very well, I replied, and doesn't want you to leave. His jaw tightened. They won't stop, I said, even if you disappear. No, he agreed, but they won't chase ghosts either. You're not a ghost, I said. You're a symbol. And symbols burn, he replied. The next hours were filled with quiet preparations. Mrs. Lynn began sorting documents. Phones were dismantled, laptops wiped. Elena watched all of it with unsettling calm. Are we playing pretend? She asked. Yes, Adrian said gently. The kind where we get to choose who we are? She nodded, satisfied. I want to be brave. I knelt in front of her. You already are. She smiled at me. So are you. That evening, Adrian took me aside. I need to know something, he said. What? If it comes down to it, he said slowly, if staying with me puts you in danger, will you leave? I didn't answer immediately. He waited. I don't run from danger, I said finally. I run from lies. He studied my face. Then let me be honest, he said. If you stay, there will be blood. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, but eventually. And if I leave, I asked, then I lose you, he replied. And maybe myself. The truth of that hung between us. That night, we didn't touch, we didn't kiss, we didn't cross the line that had been humming between us for weeks. Because once crossed, it would change everything. And we both knew it. The attack came at dawn, not loud, not chaotic, precise. The first gunshot shattered a window. The second took out the generator. The house plunged into darkness. Mrs. Lynn moved instantly. Safe room, now! Adrian grabbed Elena. I followed without thinking, heart pounding, every sense on fire. Shouting echoed outside. Footsteps, too many? Adrian shoved the hidden door open, pushing Elena inside, then me. He turned to follow, and the door slammed shut behind us. Locked. Adrian! I screamed, pounding on the steel. His voice came through the wall, calm and firm. Stay inside. You can't do this, I shouted. You said? I said I'd come back, he replied. Not that I'd come with you. Elena clung to me, sobbing now. Papa! I love you, he said loudly, so she could hear. Both of you. Footsteps retreated. Then chaos erupted. Gunfire, shouting, commands barked in languages I didn't understand. I pulled Elena against my chest, rocking her, whispering reassurances I barely believed myself. Minutes stretched, then silence, heavy, final. I don't know how long we waited before the knock came. Emma, Adrian's voice said. Open. My hands shook as I unlocked the door. He stood there, breathing hard, blood on his sleeve. Not his. Behind him, the house was wrecked. But standing, Elena launched herself at him. He held her like she was the only solid thing left in the world. When she was settled with Mrs. Lynn, Adrian turned to me. His face was drawn, older, changed. That was the last one, he said. The final warning. And now? I asked. Now I disappear, he replied. Tonight? And us? I asked quietly. He stepped closer. So do you? He said. If you'll come. The decision settled over me like a quiet certainty. Yes, I said. We left before sunrise. No goodbyes, no announcements. Just a car moving away from a life that could never follow. Weeks later, we stood on a quiet coastline far from cities, far from names that mattered. Adrian was no longer Adrian. I was no longer just Emma. Elena laughed freely for the first time in months, chasing waves without looking over her shoulder. One night, standing on the porch of a small rented house, Adrian turned to me. I don't know who I am anymore, he admitted. I took his hand. You're learning, I said. That's allowed. He looked at me, really looked. I didn't save you, he said. No, I replied. You chose change? And you? He asked. I chose you, I said simply. He leaned in then, not with urgency, not with fear, but with intention. The kiss was slow, certain, a beginning, not an escape. And as the ocean whispered behind us, I understood something finally. The job hadn't been a trap, it had been a doorway, and stepping through it hadn't saved my life. It had rewritten it. The first sign that the past hadn't finished, with us came disguised as peace, real peace, the kind that feels fragile because you don't trust it yet. We had been gone for almost 3 months, long enough for Eleanor to stop flinching at loud noises, long enough for Adrian, now simply A, to sleep through the night without waking to phantom alarms, long enough for me to wake up and forget, for a few precious seconds, that our lives had ever been anything else. The coastal town was small, quiet, anonymous. People nodded when they passed you on the street. They asked where you were from, not who you were. They didn't look twice at a man who kept to himself or a woman who watched her child too carefully. Elena started school, her first real school. She came home every day with stories about friends, about crayons and rules, and a teacher who smelled like vanilla. She stopped asking why there were no guards. She stopped checking locks. That was when I knew she was healing. Adrian struggled more. He worked odd jobs, consulting, logistics, anything that didn't require roots. He hated the lack of control, the slowness, the way problems here didn't bow to authority, only patience. But every night, he cooked dinner, burned half of it, and laughed when Elena declared his food illegal. We were building something fragile and real, which is exactly why it didn't last quietly. It happened on a Tuesday. I was at the market when I noticed the man across the street, too still, too observant, too familiar. He wasn't watching me directly, but he didn't need to. His attention moved like someone trained to see patterns. My stomach dropped. I didn't panic. I finished paying, walked calmly, took the long way home. When I reached the house, Adrian was on the porch fixing a loose step. Elena sat beside him, handing him screws like it was the most important job in the world. I didn't say anything until she went inside. Then I said it. We've been seen. He didn't look surprised. How sure are you? He asked. Certain enough, I replied. He exhaled slowly. Then they found the echo. What does that mean? I asked. It means someone followed the trail we didn't erase, he said. Not to reclaim me, to test me. That night, he didn't sleep. Neither did I. But nothing happened. Not that night. Not the next. A week passed. Then two. And just when I started to doubt myself, the message came. Not a threat. An invitation. It was handwritten. Slipped under our door like something from another century. Some men never stop being kings, no matter how far they run. No name, no address. Adrian read it once, then burned it. They want to see if I'll answer, he said. Will you? I asked. He looked at me for a long time. No, he said, but they won't accept silence. That night, we argued for the first time, not loudly, not cruelly, honestly. They'll keep coming, I said. You know that? Yes. And every time they do, Elena risks losing the life we promised her. I know. Then maybe disappearing wasn't enough, I said. Maybe you need to finish it. His jaw tightened. Finish it how? You know how? I replied quietly. He stood, pacing. I walked away so I wouldn't become that man again. And what if walking away isn't the same as protecting? I asked. That stopped him. Say it, he said. Say what you're afraid of. I'm afraid, I said, voice steady, that you'll hesitate next time. And hesitation will cost her more than violence ever would. Silence fell between us. Finally, he spoke. I built my life on endings, he said. I don't know how to create one without destroying something. I took his hand. Then don't destroy, I said. Close. 2 nights later, Elena slept over at a friend's house for the first time. Adrian packed a small bag. I'll be back by morning, he said. Or? I asked. He met my eyes. Or not? I nodded. I'll be ready either way. He kissed my forehead, not like a goodbye, but like a promise made to something fragile. When he left, the house felt hollow. I didn't sleep. At 4:17 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. I answered. It's done, Adrian said. No emotion, no explanation. Are you safe? I asked. Yes. And them? A pause. They won't look for me again. He came home just after sunrise. He looked lighter, not free, resolved. We didn't talk about what he did. We never would. Because some endings don't need witnesses. Life resumed. Months passed. Then a year. Elena turned 7. She asked if Adrian would come to her school play. He said yes, and he did. No shadows followed us. No messages arrived. The past stayed where it belonged. One night, sitting on the porch watching the ocean, Adrian spoke softly. I don't regret it, he said. What you did? I asked. What I stopped being? He replied. I leaned into him. So this is it? I asked. The ending? He smiled faintly. No? Then what is it? The middle, he said. The part where we live. Years later, when Elena asked how we met, we told her a gentler version. That I was hired to help take care of her. That her father was lost. That we found our way together. It was all true. Just edited. Because the real story wasn't about danger or power or running. It was about choice. About a man who walked away from everything he was told he had to be. About a woman who stayed when leaving would have been easier. And about a child who taught us both that safety isn't built with walls or weapons. It's built with people who refuse to disappear. And every morning, when sunlight filled our small, ordinary house, I knew the job had never been about childcare. It had been about becoming a family and choosing it every single day.